So, our good friend Clive at Stromberg Carburetor heard about our road trip in the panel truck to the Race of Gentlemen, and he thought it might be a good platform to test out the new BIG 97s. And so basically, they look just like a Stromberg 97. They're so awesome. It's so fun opening up that box every time. But they look exactly like a 97, but they're way bigger. So they flow, I think they're 250 CFM. And he's got these cutout ones. So you can see this is like the stock one, and this is the big boy. So what happens is, but you run a tri-power on like a big engine, something bigger than a flathead, and you don't have enough carburetor, especially if you want to run progressive linkage. So that's why, like in the old days, you would see a lot of guys with two 97s and a 94 in the middle, because you just wanted that little more flow. So these are perfect for a big motor, for a Chevy, for caddies, Oldsmobiles, nail heads, anything that needs more gas than those little motors, or in a tri-power situation. So what you have to do to make these work, like this is a new intake that takes Stromberg 97s. So what we need to do is port this out to fit the BIG 97. And like if you see on there, I don't know if you can see in there, but there's like that little ledge, which basically that's what we need to get rid of. That ledge is kind of like a parachute for the air and the gas. It just slows it way down. So we want to make that as close to the same size as possible. And then we're going to kind of hog out this center area. You could put this in a mill and mill this out really nicely and port it out and at least get the big chunks out. But we're going to do it with a die grinder just to prove that it's something you could easily do in your garage. So another cool thing about these BIG 97s is they have a vacuum port higher up in the carb, so it's above the butterflies. So a lot of early distributors like that better than the intake vacuum. Another thing that's really cool about these new BIG 97s is the power valve has been kind of redesigned, and it improves fuel conditioning. So it looks like the old one, but it's got kind of new guts. So it's really exciting actually, because you can't tell. It could be on a total period correct car and not stand out as being new or different, but it works really, really well. Essentially what we need to do is open up the intake to this shape, like here's your stock 97 dimensions, and this is what we have to hog it out to. So we have to kind of bring that out and kind of bring that down, and that's called the open plenum effect. If you look at the base of the carb, it's kind of hogged out in there, and they want you to kind of match that into the intake, and that's called the early plenum effect. And what that does is, right now these ports are isolated, so they're kind of each going to a cylinder. So when you open that up, it allows whatever cylinder needs it to draw the gas. So it's way more efficient and it works well. So that's kind of what we're trying to achieve. So everything about this should be way smoother and more kind of roadworthy than your stock 97. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some layout fluid on here. I'm gonna line up the carb gasket and trace out what I need. And then I'm gonna just go after it with my little die grinder with my aluminum bit. All right, so now we have the layout fluid and we gotta let that dry. But if you were doing true port, like race car guys, they take the intake and they'll take the gasket and they'll like go right through everything. So the gasket and the intake, it's all like seamless, and they polish it all. For driving on the street, you don't need to do that. So we're just, from what Stromberg says, most of the fuel goes in the middle. So the edges, if they're a little crude, won't make a big difference. Obviously, the smoother you can make everything, the better. But for this application, we're just trying to get that open plenum effect and make it so we don't have a shelf. So I think we should be able to do it pretty easily. All right, so you see I'm kind of sneaking up on it a little bit. I've got I'm going down pretty far, and I've got a nice little angle started. You know, and I'm not trying to, this isn't a race car, obviously. It's a work truck. So I don't need to get crazy with it, but definitely just trying to make a smoother path for the air and the gas. I used my little die grinder and I got it all the way, or I got the big stuff out. Then I went with my little belt sander and smoothed it out, and then I filed the edges, and I have a little bit left to do and I want to clean it up a little more, but for the most part it's pretty much ready to go. And you can see on the gaskets now, you know, that it's right in there. Alright, so we got the intake installed, carbs on, we've got the linkage on, which is so great, it works so nice, it's like, okay, one more time. Couldn't be better. So, with the whole setup, you get this real nice fuel rail that they make, and it's really nice. So I'm just kind of putting it together. It has these little fittings, and they're compression fittings, and it barely clears that linkage, which is cool. It's all tight. That feels good. Perfect. And then the fuel line will go in here, and I can put a gauge there if I get one eventually. I'll just plug it up for now. But man, it's like an honor to have those carbs on this thing. It's like, look at it. It doesn't deserve that, but it's so nice. It's unbelievable. Totally blown away.